Hi, Melanie Muenchinger here, illustrator for Gina K Designs. Today I'm sharing a project with you that I have from one of my favorite sets of all time, Inspiration Mosaic. 6 years later, this continues to be one of my best-selling sets. It's that versatile. The technique we're going to be doing today is faux paper piecing, and by this it just refers to using your markers or other coloring medium on a pattern paper to make it look like you have several different coordinating pattern papers on one card, but it's just one layer. For the products that you're going to be needing for today's card are the Inspiration Mosaic set and a large block. So this is just an image sheet that shows you that mosaic frame stamp and all of the coordinating sentiments that are planned to fit into these two showcased openings. And then we're going to use some of the other little sets to enhance this as well. I've also got some small blocks, and you can see I have a flower on here embellishing it. This is from the Flowers and Frames stamp set from Gina K Designs, one of the newest StampTV kits. And it has coordinating dies with it as well, so that's really nice for being able to cut it out and pop it up. We're going to be using the Floral Essentials pack that was designed to coordinate with that particular kit. And we have some white cardstock. This is the Gina K Baseweight Heavy Pure Luxury cardstock, and it is 4 1/4 by 11 inches, scored at 5 1/2 inches for a top fold card. And then I just have a scrap of the layering weight white. For adhesives, we've got just some glue dots and then some of the scrapbook adhesives by 3L foam squares that we'll trim up. Have some scissors. Got the Gina K Black Onyx ink for inking up that frame in Sentiment and Flower, and then just two different greens, the Gina K Grass Green and the Fresh Asparagus for those two-step leads. I prefer using alcohol markers when I'm doing this technique on the pattern papers, simply because you can fill it in and you don't get any lines like you sometimes would from a water-based marker. It all just bleeds in together and looks like just one matte color. So I'm using the DR1, DG2, and the TB2. And the way I selected these colors, this works really well just to go to the pack of pattern papers and pull out other colors that you're seeing in that pack. So here's a tip about picking something that you want to use for your faux paper piecing. When I'm looking through these patterns, if you're wanting to add color, you want to avoid one that's really, really dark. Otherwise, adding color over it is not really going to make that dramatic of a change. So let's look at my different white patterns that I have. This one would work. There it is again. And I chose the lightest one, this light blue, but you could use this one also. And you could also do, flipping through, the red or the blue, these filled in ones, but I thought it would be nice to use my markers to fill in those white flowers. So that's how I chose that particular paper. I have a piece already trimmed down to 4 by 5 1/4, and this is going to fit just centered right there on my A2 size card. But if you want to trim it afterwards, if you're concerned about doing the stamping and you want to cut it later, absolutely do that. Okay, so let's begin by inking up this frame. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way. All right, so we want to ink it up face up, and I'm just going to go across the frame all over. So you see I've got a little bit of staining in there. This is a rubber set mounted on cling foam before we went to photopolymer, but you get great impressions from this rubber, and they are die cut now. So this came out before we actually started trimming our sets. Okay, when you place this on the block, you just want to make sure that one of your lines, and it'll end up being all of the outside lines, is just running along parallel right on the edge of that grid line block. And then you're just going to center it over this mat. So you'll see just a little bit of the pattern peeking out on every side. And then just lower it. Press all over. And pick it up. Okay, perfect. Now I would also recommend, since this has a little bit of a glossy finish to it, I'm just going to take the back side of this and I'm going to press all over just so that I don't smear that ink, depending on how humid it is where you live. So you see it picked up just a tiny bit of that ink. So, or you could hit it with a heat gun if you want to do that, but that's the easiest way. Okay, so these rectangles, as I mentioned before, these are for your images or your sentiments. Whatever stamp sets you're using, you can put those in there. But today we're going to do a little bit of coloring, so let me put this here so you can see where I'm going. Going to take, first of all, this TB2 marker, and I'm just going to go quickly around the edges of this, so it's going to look like I've got a blue coordinating floral mat underneath, and that'll make it stand out on my white card base without needing any colored cardstock. So this saves a lot of cardstock, but it also lets you let those pretty prints shine through. Okay, then I'm going to go in with the green, and I'm just going to add a little bit of green to a few of these boxes. And when I'm deciding where I want to put these, just thinking about trying to make the color play around in different areas of my card. And if you want to use the chisel tip for these larger areas, you can do that. You just need to be careful in the corners, the tighter areas. So you might want to just trace around first with that fine tip so you have the edges filled in, and then go back in with the fatter side. Okay, and you can make it darker and darker by layering it even more. So go back in there a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to do the red. So I'm going to put some down here in this corner. And then also think about where you want your embellishments to go. So I'm going to put that flower just right here, and so that red behind it is really going to make the white pop. Now, depending on how much color you have in the background or how busy it is, you might choose to stamp your sentiment directly into one of those rectangles. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here. And I thought it looked okay, but it could get a little bit lost in those darker leaves. So I'm just going to show you two different options for how you can do that. Fill that in right there. It's really coming together. I think that looks so pretty. And then I'm just going to add just a little bit of blue. Just going to take this, and I'm just going to do a dab in some of the petals, not all of them. And you don't have to be exacting about it. If you've seen me do these little shadows before on petals, it's just a little dab to the centers over those little lines you see in the middle, just like they're opening up. So it just adds a little more interest and color to your pattern. Okay, so I'm going to use a small grid line block for putting my sentiment on to make sure that I have it lined up. So I'm just going to line up that sentiment there, and then I'm going to stamp it in the black. Make sure that your work surface is covered with something. As you can see, these alcohol markers are going through this thin pattern paper. Okay, so I'm just going to put it right here. So that's the beauty of this frame. It takes the guesswork out of where do the sentiments go or where do the images go. It's based on a rule of thirds. Okay, so I'm going to, I can read that, but I just think it would look a little bit better if we went ahead and put it on another piece of paper so that it really stands out. So this rectangle here measures 1 3/8 inches by 2 3/8 inches if you want to cut that out. Or I will show you what else you can do if you don't want to bother with measuring. You can just paper piece it the same way that you did in other projects. So that's just going to layer right on there. But I'll show you what you can also do. Just take this frame, ink up just the part that you need to paper piece. And this is that box there on the bottom. And then I'm just going to press it and pull it away. And so then you would just cut that out. And this way you retain that black border all around, which is consistent with the rest of the mosaic. What you can also do with another piece of paper is to carefully take a black marker and go around the edges. But that can be a little trickier if you end up going a little bit too heavy on one side and it can look kind of wobbly. So this is probably the best option if you're willing to take the extra time, just results wise. So let me stamp this again on here. And then I will add that to my frame with just a little bit of adhesive. Right there. And then I'm just going to add a few little accents. I'm going to take this circle border that I have in the set, and so these little geometric patterns, the dots and the squares, really look nice when you add them to the frame and the corners. So you can get creative, but just anywhere you think it needs a little something, or you just want to do a little bit of extra stamping. So I put some here, and then I put some here. But you could also do it right there, underneath the stamp, underneath the sentiment, whatever you feel like, okay? Also, let me go ahead and I'm just gonna add a sentiment quickly to the inside. So this contains longer greetings, not just the big happy birthday and thank you, but then you have some sentiments that will work inside your card. So this one says, it's not the years in your life, it's the life in your years. And then I'm going to go ahead and add this flower. Again, this is from the Flowers and Frames kit. And here is the die cut flower. I'm not sure if I held this up earlier, but there is the die. And I've already cut this from the white cardstock. And then it just fits right on there. And I'm going to add just a little bit of this blue to match the flowers on the front. And I'll just dot in a little bit of this red in the middle. And then I will show you how the two-step works inside of here. So first I'm going to do the base of the leaves. So this is with your, this is with your lighter color. This is the grass green. Right in here. Okay, and that is going to fade quite a bit as it dries. And then we're going to take our darker green, those veins inside. Gosh, that was lucky. I have a harder time sometimes holding these smaller blocks. Okay, so right over that, and then we'll add just a little bit of blue there as well. So I don't show decorating the inside of my cards very often in my videos. I need to do that more. But it's always nice to just bring the outside in, have that coordination since you have the stamps already. All right, so let's go ahead and adhere this to the front of the card. And then I'm going to just add the leaves and the flower with some pop dots. And I like to trim these out. They're so big, so I only use what I need here. And I just want that to overlap that greeting a little bit, and it just accents that red square. And then we'll put just some pieces here on the back of these leaves. And I like how the pop dots make it stand out from that pattern so they don't get lost, this similar green. And just nest that in, and your card is complete. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope this gives you a lot of ideas for what to do with faux paper piecing. Just get out your markers and get out your favorite pattern papers and play with creating new custom ones whenever the mood strikes you. Please visit my blog, Hands, Head, and Heart, for more ideas and inspiration about how to use my stamp sets and all our sets from Gina K Designs and StampTV. Thank you for watching today, and God bless.